if you're resonating with this and you're going, wow, this is me, or this is my spouse, we're not emotionally present with each other, or one person is or one person is. What do we do, Doc? I mean, what do we do? Here's some things you can do. Number one, first and foremost, where does your emotional disconnection come from? Identify where it originates. It probably isn't with your spouse. You probably brought it into your life from your childhood, from things in the past. Begin to identify where they came from. I know it came from my childhood. Shocked with a cow prod, always being put down by my stepmother, never learning that I'm never going to be good enough or I'm not lovable. It's just the way it was. Number two, take a risk and open up and confide. You can never build emotional intimacy until you confide, because confiding is the path for the brain to emotionally bond. But when you're emotionally disconnected, or you fear connection, you don't open up to people. You don't confide in them. So you've got to take a risk and start confiding. And that's scary, because if I start to take my mask off and let you see the real me inside, the heart of me, my fears, my insecurities, the things that are in my head, the things I've done that I've got a lot of shame. And if I opened up and shared those things, there's a fear that you'll reject me, you won't want me, that you'll judge me. And boy, I tell you, years ago, when I started taking that risk and letting the love see the real me, you know what I was met with? Love and acceptance. Just love and acceptance. And I thought, wow, she does love me. And that encouraged me to open up more. You got to have patience. Number three, what should you do? Have patience. It's not going to happen over time. You have to grow to be this person. It's taking you a while to get where you are. It's going to take a little while to get where you want to be. A lot of people ask me, well, Dr. Rick, in your own healing and transformation, about how long did it take you? I would argue I'm still doing it. But way back then, 20-something years ago, I would say probably a good 8 years is when I really felt that I was that way as a way of being. You know what? 8 years is a long time. Actually, it's not. It's a blip on the radar screen, actually. Because you realize I'm not living my whole life just doing that. It was a part of what I was doing, but I was still being a dad. I was still going to work. I was still being a husband. But in the midst of it, I was still transforming my life. All right. So have patience. And you've got to risk. Number four, you've got to risk trusting. I said it again. I said, take a risk, open up, confide. But you got to risk trusting too. If you've hurt me, I got to risk trusting that you won't hurt me again. Anytime you trust someone, you're taking a risk. Take the risk. If that person keeps failing you, then they're telling you who they are. And you know not to trust. Number five, another way you can build some intimacy and connection back, being emotionally available to each other, and invite your spouse into doing this. We do regularly. I say every day. Can we do that every day here and have for years? Share an appreciation with each other with every day. Send loving text notes to each other. Because I was traveling a lot, I would open up my suitcase when I would get to a hotel, and there'd be a card from Luella. Words of love and encouragement. Boy, oh boy, I'd get a major dopamine shot. That's, by the way, the neurochemical when released is a feeling of pleasure. Do the things you used to do when you were dating with each other. All right? Start to do those things. Start opening up and talking and sharing, listening to each other, hearing each other's hurts, and listening to the new things that are taking place in their life. Allowing them to share the things they're not sure about or puzzled about. You see? Seeking forgiveness. All of these things you can begin to do that will allow you to be connected to yourself and others. Start building the intimacy back. You'll feel it. Take a risk and trust. But you can't do it until you start confiding, right? And have patience. Just be patient. Now, you might say, well, Doc, it took you 8 years. Yeah, probably. I remember I told you I would say I'm still becoming that person. I'm not where I used to be 25 years ago. I'm not where I want to be based on my mind. But you want to know something? Here's what I learned about life. Life is a journey. If you're going to take a trip around the world, you'll cross through mountains, you'll cross through valleys, you'll actually have to cross some water like lakes. You have to cross an ocean, of course. You'll actually end up in deserts and maybe swamps as well. All right. In other words, the journey around the world has very, very different topographies, doesn't it? And yet they're a part of the whole that we call Earth, our planet. And all of those on our planet have a purpose and a reason at the ecological level. You know, I've learned about life. Life is a journey as well. Your journey started when you were born. Your parents do affect your journey, by the way, in those early years of your life. But in your life, in your marriage, you're going to have valleys. Some valleys are actually beautiful. Think about it. Some are pretty dry. You'll have mountaintops. You'll have rainstorms. You'll have hurricanes. You'll go through swamps and deserts. You go through the plains. You go through the Swiss Alps, possibly. You're going to cross lakes and oceans. Good times and bad. Good weather, bad weather. But here's what I've learned. It's not the journey, because life is a journey no matter what. And there are things that happen on your journey you have no control over. You have no control when a tsunami hits, or when a hurricane hits, or a tornado. You can't control that. What I can control, my responses and my reactions to the things that happen on life's journey. And as I set out on life's journey, I bring things with me. I bring my past history, my past learnings, my beliefs about the world that maybe I never checked out to see if they are accurate or not. But as you walk a journey, when you walk down the journey of life, all of those things impact who you are and how you experience the journey. You see, people who grew up in a lot of pain and hurt, when they see the world, right? So here's my pain. This is my pain. I always say this: people are going to look at the world through the prism of their pain. Your pain becomes a prism by which you look at the world, by which you interpret the world. The problem is you never question whether your interpretation or assumptions about the world and what's going on are accurate or not. You just assume that what you see is. It may not be. And maturity is the ability to step back and question those assumptions my brain is making at 1/200th of a second about the world to see if they're accurate or not. Practical example. In the early days, because of things that Lila did, because she was not emotionally available, my brain just assumed, you don't love me, I'm not important to you. It made that decision at the unconscious level because it was already in my brain from my childhood. So then I began to treat her and live in the marriage knowing that I wasn't good enough. I didn't matter. I'm not attractive enough. All of that was my own construction. Now, she did things that would send that message, but in her heart, it wasn't necessarily true, but I believed it to be true. So I treated her out of that. It affected the journey of our marriage in those early years till I began to become emotionally present to myself, face my wounded heart, deal with those wounds in healthy, mature ways, and begin to live life with truth. With truth. What is true? She has a perspective, I have a perspective. But if we would put our perspectives together, then we'd understand reality. Truth. And once you get clarity about what is true, you can make good decisions for yourself, for your partner, and for us. America is a very emotionally disconnected nation. The leading health crisis in America today, an epidemic portion, isn't a COVID. That's an urgent crisis. It's actually been loneliness. Americans are more lonely and disconnected than ever before. And sadly, the medical journals and report that the more lonely and disconnected you are, the higher risk you are for heart disease, strokes, heart attacks, all kinds of abdominal problems, depression, anxiety disorders, other psychiatric illnesses, and addictions. And the insurance companies pay for the treatment of all that. Is it any wonder why they want loneliness stopped? When we learn to become healthy, mature adults, we're connected to ourselves and we're connected to others. You can build on us. And I promise you, you'll never live life alone. And that's the most sweetest way to live life as an us.